My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. Seen by millions of people all over the world. I've even heard that David Hogg tunes in because he wants to know how the real experts do it, so whatever. Well, if you're like me, folks, you're sick of those kids. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat what everybody else in media seems to be sugarcoating. That I don't know if they don't get. They can't. How can they not get it? That these kids are narcissists. They are so out of touch with anything security related, but they are 100% on board with any type of communist type narrative that's out there. Let's get rid of the Second Amendment. You can't say those things because you're weird because you feel strongly about the Constitution. Nothing new. Let's talk about it. All right, so I was on, yes, that's right, all you leftists that are watching. I was on NRA TV today, and gosh, I know that's just terrible. But, so, I did not, I'm going to admit something here. I did not watch the speeches by these kids, and I didn't sit in front of the TV and watch this nonsense. I caught the highlights because I didn't want to sit there and watch this nonsense all day. Well, I did get this, though, today. It was a soundbite off of Tucker Carlson's show. Let me play this for you real quick. It just shows the reality of what they were actually protesting. This was not anything that had to do anything about March for Life. It wasn't about life. It was about the Second Amendment. And anybody who marches against the Second Amendment obviously doesn't understand the purpose of the Second Amendment. But let's see. Let's play this real quick and see if it goes through.
There's really a handful of marches that you remember, that our town remembers: the civil rights marches of the 60s, the abortion rights marches of the 80s and 90s, Tea Party, Million Man March. I think about those things. This is right up there.
Okay, so that was Meet the Press, and he's saying that the civil rights marches equate to this, which is very interesting because civil rights were to make sure that everyone had the same rights. These marches were basically created by the people who want to limit your rights or to diminish them completely. So this has nothing to do with anything like equal rights or the 60s and the protests and the marches by Martin Luther King. It had nothing to do with anything like that. Those marches back then were there because there were inequalities in this country that didn't allow people to the freedom to be the best that they can be. And people were discriminated against. And so things happened because of our constitutional rights, because of the Bill of Rights, and that's what allowed them. That's why those protests were so important back then. Those were more than just protests. Those were actually real. That was unity. And although I will be honest with you, a lot of those same people are involved in this stuff today. I think that was an interesting time when communists I'll be honest, without the leftists and their understanding of subversion, we probably wouldn't have been able to get to the point where these marches were so profound. See, that's what's different about a free country, is that, in a free society, is that when you bring up things and you show proof that there's inequality, that there is real oppression. Well, if you have a Constitution, a Bill of Rights like ours, it doesn't matter who's setting up the subversion. It's actually going to work for the people. That's what happened. Now what you're seeing is complete subversion for the sheer fact of degrading the Second Amendment, which we know that what these people actually want. They're now confessing to be communist. There's actually people that in the mainstream media that are talking about communism now. They're talking about these kids, and although they're using kids gloves when they talk about these adults. They're young adults. They're 18 years old, right? They can go to war. They can right now. They can get a gun in most places. They can, drive. They're adults. They can get a real job. They can go to college. They can move out, and the parents can't tell them what to do. They can get married, have babies, have sex all they want at 18. Nothing their parents can say about it. And bring a child into this world on their own, with their own choice, with no ramifications of it. That's the way it is. Hey, listen, it's legal right now. I don't agree with it, but they can go get an abortion if they want at 18 years old. Yet they're not mature enough. These people don't think they're mature enough to carry a gun. I think that's crap. What the reality is that they want to diminish the Second Amendment. Let me play some more of this soundbite.
Wheels of change are happening, and I'm getting chills just having this conversation just north of the National Mall, where women's suffrage started and civil rights.
I think they'll exceed the 500,000, but whatever the number.
Which they didn't. Estimates put it at like between 200,000 and 400,000 people. And you got to remember, folks, when we say that 200,000 to 400,000 people showed up, it's the same people that showed up for the Women's March, for any other the March against Donald Trump, anything that they want to protest, these leftists. That's who show up for this stuff. It's the same people. I was on NRE TV this morning, and there's another interview right before mine. I can't remember what the guy's name was, but he's been to all these, and he said it was the same people. The same people that he saw before. And so it's very interesting how it's dawning on people that this is actually coordinated. And when you talk to people, and when you look at the signs, and you saw the people that actually had the guts to go up there and talk about the Second Amendment, the hatred, the signs were all against the Second Amendment. None of it was about school safety. They weren't talking about how they can fix the school systems and make them safer. They didn't talk about threat assessments. They didn't talk about what the heck is wrong with that crazy leftist sheriff down there in Broward County. They didn't talk about any of that stuff. You know, of course, who this loudmouth is that's talking right now. It's Al the Freakazoid Sharpton. I don't know if you can see that or not.
But the makeup and the content of it is something that this nation has never seen.
The makeup and the content of it. Good Lord. It said it's something that the nation has never seen. Well, I mean, I will give him this. We have never seen subversion in this country to the point that it's at now, where subversive, unified, organized groups own the media. They own the majority of the heavy money donors globally. They own the majority of political seats on the Democratic Party, and a lot of them on the Republican Party. They owned the presidency during Barack Obama. I'm not real clear if they didn't own it during the Bush administration. They definitely owned it during the Clinton administration, and they own, I don't know how many different countries around the world where they have stepped into positions and owned those presidencies and prime minister roles because they have the big money to run the campaigns. That's the facts. That's what it is. So when we listen to old crazy
this nation has never seen this.
This nation has never seen not Jesse Jackson. He's just as crazy, but Al Sharpton. Anytime you see these people popping up anywhere, you know that the credibility is shot. Okay, it's gone. And I guess here's my biggest complaint right now is that I want to put this nicely, because I do like Tucker Carlson. Joe Concha, I've got to have him on this show. I should have called him tonight right after he was on Tucker Carlson. He's never been on the show, but I'd like to have had him on here because, look, I went on NRA TV 3-4 weeks ago, but right after it happened, and I already saw what was happening with these kids. And I've had hair now because I'm burning up in here. And so what happened was I saw right off the bat that these kids were bad news, that they were propagandists, that they were being used. And I knew that this was going to spin into something other than school safety. I could see it happening. So I went on NRA TV and I said that these kids are national security threat. They are a danger to or a threat to this country. And I said it on multiple other networks as well. I think I said it on Sean Hannity's radio show. And I waited for the fallout. And you know what? It wasn't that much fallout because that is who they are. They're proving it. I don't have to say anything else. They're proving it themselves. David Hogg is proving this faster than anything I could ever say. Hold on one second. And so when I watched Joe Concha today, again, Joe Concha is a friend of mine, and I would say this to his face. I do want to say it to his face. And same thing with Tucker Carlson and some other people. They're this close to saying reality. Even when I was on NRA TV, and I believe heavily in the NRA, and I think NRA TV is an incredible product that they're putting out. Grant Stinchfield is amazing. But we've got to stop playing with kids' gloves. They aren't playing with kids' gloves. We have to stop. We have to push forward, not throttle back. Stop apologizing for these children. Stop. Okay, first of all, this is like the whole radical Islam thing. I know it's fundamental Islam. I've studied Islam. I've studied religions. I've been a SEAL. I've been in the FBI. It's fundamental Islam. That's who's fighting us. That's who is trying to conquer the world. But they say radical Islam or radicals or jihads. It's fundamental Islam. But we all succumb to saying radicals because I stopped now. But for the longest time, I had a problem with that. Well, it's the same thing with these people from this high school. You know, Emma Gonzalez, she's 18 years old. I think that David Hogg is 17, almost 18. The fact is they are not children. That's the first thing. We got to stop calling them children because they're not. It doesn't matter if they're seniors in high school. They are not children. Secondly, we have to stop acting like these poor little things. They absolutely have no clue what they're doing. That is not true. They know exactly what they are doing because they believe in it, because they are propagandists. These people have been trained. This isn't just something new. I was watching the video just a little while ago because people are right now, they're trying to find out. This is a quote from David Hogg when he was interviewed by CBS. He said, on the day of the shooting, I got my camera and got on my bike and rode as fast as I could 3 miles from my house to the school to get as much video and to get as many interviews as I could because I knew that this could not be another mass shooting. Now, that doesn't make any sense because he released a video, which I just watched a little while ago, of them in the school, supposedly in the school, and so it doesn't jive. Was he in the school or was he not in the school? So let's see. I'm going to try not to get kicked off here because I don't want them. I don't know, what I can play on here, what I can't. This comes from the LA Times. It's online, so hopefully they won't kick me off for playing this. And you've probably seen this, most of you. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Stand by 1 second. 1 second. Got 7 seconds.
So right now we're in a school, an active shooter. It's not a drill, and it's currently.
Hello.
It's 2:52.
Where are you right now?
I heard one gunshot, and we thought it was a drill initially, but it's not. Hopefully I live through this. At around 2:30, we heard a gunshot in my AP Environmental Science class, and we initially thought it was a drill. And then we heard more gunshots. And that was when we realized this was not a drill. This was life or death. Okay. So it's now 3:13, and we've heard supposedly it's a senior, not confirmed at all. The senior is believed to be named Nick Cruz, but this has not been confirmed. This is the latest information that we have, though. We still believe that the person has been neutralized, but we're still currently on lockdown.
We're on lockdown because there was an active shooting. We thought it was a
hold on.
outside, and then people started running because there were shots. I didn't hear them personally, and then I started running.
I really don't think there's anything new to say, but there shouldn't have to be, because if you looked around this closet and saw everyone just hiding together, you would know that this shouldn't be happening anymore, and that it doesn't deserve to happen to anyone, and that no amount of money should make it more easily accessible to get guns. And that's that.
I personally.
Okay, first of all, I got to tell you, I can hear police radios in the background there. That's the first thing. Secondly, there is no fear in any of these kids at this point, especially the last girl. I mean, there's no fear in David Hogg at all, but this last girl, to me, if you don't know where a shooter is and people are telling you to be quiet, the last thing you're going to do is go on a tirade about the Second Amendment and all the other nonsense, and then kind of smile at the camera when you don't know if the shooter is still in the building or not. I heard conflicting reports that they were having a rehearsal with law enforcement at that time, so I don't even know. I don't know, and we need to find out when this video was actually made, because the information that he stated on CBS on an interview was that he grabbed his camera and rode to the school when this happened. So did they make this video after? Did they make this video before when the rehearsal was going on, and it just so happened as a coincidence that that there was a shooter? I'm sure not the part about Nick Cruz, but there's some, I got to be honest with you. There's something strangely odd about this video that I just don't get, and it appears to me, because it's not solidly running. It's actually edited, where they end up going out of the school and the sheriff's deputies are telling them to go places. I'm not seeing shock and awe. I'm seeing compliance and kind of calmness. So I don't know if this stuff was filmed the day of the shooting or if it was filmed during one of the rehearsals that they had, or a rehearsal that they may have had. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. But if, let's say this is real and they actually filmed this when they were at school, it's very odd. Let's go back. I'm going to listen to a little bit more of David Hogg here.
That school shootings have happened so much to the point that we need drills for them almost as often as fire drills is unacceptable.
Okay, so that leads me to believe that might be a drill.
Legislators of this country to take action and stop this from happening. Thousands of people have died from gun violence, and it's time to take a stand. Forget the NRA, forget all of your political backing. Take a stance for human lives, for children lives.
All right, so we made it out.
So that was before. That was before. That was supposedly during the actual shooting, is when that supposedly happened. And he's already talking about the NRA. Look, come on. I call BS on this, all right? Because, first of all, I was a teenager. We all were. I know, I mean, tons of young people, mentored people. This is just, for them to be sitting there in a room when an active shooter is in there, they don't know where they're at, and they're already talking about the NRA. Either these kids are already activists. I wouldn't doubt if they're out there been, you know, flying around doing all this stuff with Antifa on their summer vacations. Their parents are probably activists, but they're way too schooled on this stuff. I'm not calling them crisis actors or any of that stuff. I'm calling BS on this video. Either there is something wrong with these people where they have no remorse, there's no fear, there's no emotion involved, or there's something about this video. Now, he said that they're having more rehearsal or more drills for active shooter than they are for fires. That was his words. So if that's the case, how do we know that this wasn't that this wasn't a pre-filmed thing when they were doing one of these drills, and then maybe they dubbed it in when they were all leaving, or if that was part of the drill as well? I don't know. Nobody's moving with a real purpose though in the other part of this video here.
FBI.
My classroom was actually eerily quiet. It was a lot of people calling their parents, obviously frantically calling their parents, wanting to make sure that they're letting them know that they're okay. But sadly, my sister luckily survived the situation in our newsroom at WMSD TV, but her two best friends died.
So his sister is in the news there as well.
It's unfathomable to think about. The fact that my sister is calling me at 5 in the morning when I'm out doing interviews when I should be in school is a testament to where this country has come. And the fact that we have to deal with these situations again and again and again is unacceptable. How many children are going to have to die until we actually stand up and say this is not okay? Because we can say that it's not okay, and we can have all these ideas, but without action, these ideas remain ideas, and children die as a result.
Why am I even playing this? Because it's that bad. It's that bad that I want you to see this. Hold on. I'm getting emails from people. So, folks, this is so odd, and it's going to be impossible for me to piece this together. I'm not somebody who likes to go with conspiracy theories. I've told you my whole thing about conspiracy theories. I've seen where I knew the truth, and I've seen a perp, making stuff up. We were listening to their phone calls, and we knew the truth. And it's amazing what your brain can put together when you think you know everything that's going on, and you actually don't. And that was the case with this perp when we had done a case with him. And so I know not to jump ahead of the equation here. But something is not adding up in that video. It's not adding up with the fact that David Hogg is saying that he grabbed his phone and got on his bike and rode 3 miles to get to the school. So that, is that telling us that he wasn't at the school? Because if he wasn't at the school, then potentially those videos were pre-made, and then a whole ball of wax opens up here. We need to figure this out. So Dottie says, let's just stop showing their faces. Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but I think we're kind of on to something here. Potentially, maybe it's nothing, but I don't want to stop. I know about broadcasting this that people are going to start going and putting things together. But I know also that there's somebody on Twitter here that says, are people really this stupid? We're not stupid. Look, the things aren't adding up on this. And the fact is, even if there's nothing to it, these adults that are about to graduate school are so far left that they're either completely blinded because of the way they were brought up, or they've been going in these circles. And you may think that's just crazy. Listen, I have seen at the universities around here, I get sent flyers from people. They get them off the bulletin boards where they're having communism meetings. There was one I showed on this show before. I don't know if I have it right here or not. where they were having a meeting for a communist group. I had it here. I don't know if I got rid of it. Down here in New York. I'll have it right here. And this stuff happens. It's not fake. I'm not making it up. It's not ridiculous. Antifa people will tell you that they're communist. They say all this stuff about fascism, but they don't realize that that the majority of communist leaders basically are, there's very little that separates a fascist from a communist. I mean, they all enslave people. They all make either a centralized government or a centralized dictator, which in the fact of a dictator, the government is still strong, all powerful. They're really one and the same. And so they do meet, they do organize, they are unified, and there's nothing new. And assuming that these kids may potentially be a part of this is not anything strange. It is plausible. And again, this show, for those of you for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, or that you're liberal, you should know that on this show, I try not to focus on conservative and liberal, on gay or straight, or black or white, or woman or man. I tend to stay away from those things because I don't believe in those separations in this day and age. I believe everybody has a fair share. If you want to be the best you can be, you don't have to have somebody of the same color, gender, or sexuality to do something first so that you can say, oh, I guess I can do it. No, you can go do it yourself. Now you have all the abilities to do it. It may be harder for some people. You may run into racists or misogynists or bigots. Who knows? But all you got to do is go around those people or walk right over them and keep going. I know I grew up extremely poor. I grew up with nothing in a house full of 3 sisters and my mom, in a broken home. My father died when I was 13. And I was able to pull myself up out of that. It took me, where I was getting the number 3, it took me 3 years after I graduated college. College I paid my own way through. It took me 3 years to get in the Navy. Look, the fact is, people have way sadder stories than I do, but everybody has their challenges. Rise to the occasion. But if you want to be safer in this day and age, taking guns away from law-abiding citizens that never do anything to harm other people unless they're in self-defense is not the way to do it. I saw a statistic today. I know liberals like statistics, and if you're liberal, I would suggest that you get away from the Democratic Party, and you're going to realize that people who call them liberal and people who call themselves conservative, if you just strip those away and look at the issues, we could fix these with a lot of solutions. We just have to put certain things off bounds, like don't touch the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But here's what I heard today. The United States is 3rd in murders throughout the world. Yes, that's right, 3rd in murders. However, if you remove Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and New Orleans, the United States then becomes 189th out of 193 countries in the entire world. That means we're one of the safest countries in the world outside of Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and New Orleans. All 5 cities, coincidentally, have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. That should make you pause. So, the whole point of this rant is that we have to, if the NRA, Second Amendment supporters, constitutionalists, women, men, gay and straight, black, white, listen, stop with this nonsense of division. Stop following these people. Remember what happened, and look, it was only 60 years ago when Hitler was around. 60 years ago. And, I have a lot of Jewish friends here in this city, and we've talked about this a lot. And a lot of them, even some of my liberal friends who are Jewish, don't know why the Jewish population in this country is so liberal and far left a lot of the times, considering it was only 60 years ago when Hitler was around, and the Jewish population in Germany walked themselves to the trains where they were shipped off, their stuff was confiscated, and they were sent to the gas chambers and the fires to burn them. Only 60 years ago. It's not like that stuff happened thousands of years ago. When we went to World War II, the Japanese believed that they were a higher evolved human species. That's only 60 years ago. But if you go back, not quite the length of time this country has been around, back to the mid-1800s, that's where Karl Marx came around. As soon as he came around, they started secreting Marxism, which became communism, which morphed into all now globalism and progressive democratic or democracy, whatever you want to call it. It started secreting itself because of these radicals all around the globe. First, it kind of hit, Russia, hit around Germany, in the Eastern Bloc in that area. It did make its way to this country in the early 1900s and has been growing ever since. What's interesting is how nowadays, like everything else, they don't realize where it came from. They forget because we've been indoctrinated for so long. But if you go back a little further than that, a little over 240 years ago, our founding fathers created this country. They looked at history, all of history, and they came up with a Declaration of Independence and a Constitution and a Bill of Rights. They argued about the Bill of Rights. Some of them wanted it in the Constitution. Others didn't. They wanted to put the Constitution out and then amendment like the Magna Carta. And so that's what they did. They amended the Constitution so they could have, I guess this was their thinking, the Bill of Rights to the side so that it would stand out as the Bill of Rights. Not so that it would stand out so that God-given rights, which if you think about this, you cannot mend the rights that God has bestowed upon man. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the press. That means all in that right there gives you the right, not the ability. It gives you the right to say what you want without fear of retribution, to organize without fear of retribution against the government, and to print and disseminate the information against the government if you want, or your religion, or your dislike of things, without having to worry about retribution. The Second Amendment, very next one, before all these other rights, right? They gave you, God presented to the founding fathers, and they put in the Constitution the right to not fear retribution. That's really what the First Amendment comes down to, in what you say, in the actions that you have, as long as they're not criminal. And if you're speaking out against the government or other people or printing things, you're not going to be attacked by the government. But if you don't have, and they know this because they studied history, a defensive mechanism in place to strengthen the citizenry, then you have no real First Amendment. It's granted by God, but you don't have the ability. See, that's the difference. God grants the rights to mankind. That's why it is the way it is. That's why God has developed, and it's morphed into this relationship with God, because he doesn't want people who he has to enslave. That's whenever you see a religion where you got to do a certain amount of things in order to be considered good, that to me, from what I've studied and knowing God, is that makes no sense. That would be like it's like conscription. It's like the draft, where you force people to go in and serve in a certain capacity. And so what you see is that God wants people to choose him. And the country needs that as well. You have the freedom to say what you want to say without being forced to believe a certain way. Believe what you want. Say what you want. You're fine. So what has happened is that plus the Second Amendment, which God granted this mankind and granted our country these rights so that you may be able to protect the rest of your rights. He doesn't give you the ability necessarily to carry it out, because if we take away the Second Amendment, or if people just don't stand up for it and use their ability to do it, that's really up to us. It's like honesty and truth. You know, God lays that out, and he convicts people's hearts so that you say, you know, when you lie, you feel bad about it. But you're the one that has the choice and the ability to say the truth and to do what's right. So our rights are like that. And if you give up your abilities or your ability to defend the other rights and you weaken your citizenry, then what happens is the rest of your rights are now in jeopardy. That's why this is so important. That's why patriots are so focused on this. That's why people are starting to question this, because it's starting to become apparent when you look at the FBI and the DOJ and the CIA and all these government entities. And I'm not talking about the hard working agents out there, many of who shouldn't be in the job to begin with, but the executives, the political appointees, the senior executive service members. What you're seeing is a group of people that if you don't believe, or if a president is running for office that they don't see eye to eye with, they will conspire to get rid of them with a quote-unquote insurance policy, as they talked about in the text messages between Strzok and the FBI attorney Lisa Page. So there's precedents 240 years ago. There's precedents now. And what I'm trying to say here out of all this is that the media, the real people in media, if you ever wanted to take a stand and actually stand for something, for real journalism, you have to report this. Stop going up there, all right? This is what I can't stand. You don't go up there and say, you know, Stormy Daniels, which we'll talk about in a second. Stormy Daniels, you know, she may be a porn star, but she's actually a very lovely lady, obviously been victimized. You know, she carries herself very well, so you can't judge her based on her career. You don't go up and apologize for somebody like that before you take their statement. Why are you doing that for these kids? Why are you saying that these children, these kids that were in this school where the shooting happened, that, you know, oh, they're just being used, they're pawns? No. How many students know that they want to go to school, to college? How many students rebel against their parents and do whatever they want? They tell them not to go out. They make a decision. They go out anyway. They sneak out. Don't drink until you're 18 or until you're 21. They go out and get people to buy them beer. You know, these people make rational decisions on their own. They may be bad decisions, but it's time that the media and you all and some of these people that call themselves reporters stop apologizing for these actions. It's not your job. I haven't even been looking at what they're saying on Twitter. Somebody says, Jonathan, please be more informed, at least regarding George Washington's faith. Pfft, come on. I know what you're saying. And there's rumors out there about what they believe this way or that way. Look, I don't care what George Washington's faith was. I do believe he was a Christian. But the fact is, the rights, if you understand, not just read it, but if you understand God and the way that he works and the reason why he does the things that he does, the reason why things are slow sometimes and other times they're sped up, the reason why he gives us the rights, but it's our own abilities that are going to support those, defend them, and make them long-standing, is because he wants us to have ownership and take responsibility. Look, this is one thing, and I'm telling you guys a lot of stuff that the media is never going to talk about, of course, but I have thought long and hard and pondered all these different things about God, and when I was growing up poor, and when I was going through all the stuff in college and through SEAL training, you know, I don't know what other guys were thinking about, but quite often when I was sitting there in that cold water, what I was thinking about is, why was I called to do this, and what am I learning from this? When I was in Ranger School, where you know, they say when you graduate Ranger School, you have the immune system of a severe burn victim and the same amount of vitamins in your body as somebody who's been dead for 3 days, because you eat once a day and sleep an average of 2 hours a night for 62 days. So there were times when other guys are falling out and quitting, and I sat there and thought to myself, you know, why am I being propelled to go through this pain and this? And what I started to realize is that, you know, we're all surprised when we die, or when somebody else dies, but we all die. We don't have a very long time here. Even 80, 90 years is not a long time. It's not. When I went through SEAL training and I went through officer candidate school, what I started to realize is that you are being trained a finite basic set of skills, but it's really upon you in those training evolutions to show that you can be trusted, that you can be trained, and that you won't quit. You don't really learn to be a SEAL in BUDS. That's the basic underwater demolition SEAL training. Just like you don't really aren't a sailor, a Marine, or an airman, or somebody in the Coast Guard. When you graduate boot camp, you got a whole host of other things you got to learn before you become a Marine, but you're not entrusted with those things until you graduate from these basic trainings where you prove you can be trained, trusted, and that you won't quit. Life is very simple. It's very similar to that. Are you learning enough about God and about life that you can show him that you can be trained, that you can be trusted, and that you won't quit? Are you learning? Do you realize that? You're not going to learn how to be a superhuman while you're here on this earth, but you can, through all your faults and all the trials and tribulations, you can prove those three things: trained, trusted, and won't quit. Our rights in this modern age give us the freedom to do just that. We're not held to a standard. We're only held to our standard. Do we subscribe to God's standard? Do we try to rise up every day and be the best we can be? Well, some of us do, some of us don't. Some of us do, and we falter 360 days out of the year. 5 days we get it right, but we're still pushing forward. These rights that we have in our Constitution that were put into the Bill of Rights were made despite the religion of the Founding Fathers. This is a master-crafted history that we live in. It's just like life itself. If you're a scientist, I would imagine they'd be on Twitter saying, well, God doesn't exist, and, you know, science and blah, 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 and this is all an accident, and I don't believe any of that. You're never going to be able to convince me. The fact is, this is all by design. Everything, when I finish something and I go through a huge trial and tribulation in my life, I always sit back and say, there's no way that was an accident. That was meant to happen. I learned so much from that. I had to prove so much during that. It hurt so bad that it literally changed me forever. That's no accident. Just like it's not an accident that all the roads around the globe, pretty much, more or less, are the same width, the same road signs, and the cars are made the same. Street signs, street lights, they all work the same. That's because they're by design. Now, I don't know if people in Europe and United States all got together and said, let's make cars 6 feet wide or 8 feet wide, whatever they are. They're about 6.5 feet wide. No, probably less than that, probably 70 inches wide. So it's not, maybe they did get together. But what if they didn't? What if it wasn't by design? That means that maybe this guy designed it and that guy designed it differently. So cars over in Zimbabwe are 12 feet wide, so they can fit, and they're only 6 feet long, so they get their whole family this way instead of this way. You know, it's because it's by design. It's because people got together and they realized this works and that doesn't, and so that's how That's how that's called by design. So and I know this is kind of a roundabout way of talking about this stuff, but when we talk about the rights in the Constitution, and we talk about the creation of mankind and the way things have evolved through history, it's by design. This stuff isn't just happening by accident. There's choices that you have to make and leaders have to make and people have to make, but God knows the beginning and the end. He knows. So he can make certain things happen, and then the rest of the stuff we choose along the way. And our rights that were granted through the Constitution are exactly that. They were there by design, and whether or not we protect them or give them away is up to us. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm one who's not going to give my rights away. None of them. I don't give my rights away. I spent, and this has had to go with me my entire career in the federal government, I spent 5 hours in a drunk tank in North Little Rock, Arkansas, because I got jumped by 3 guys that were in the Army when I was in a drive-thru at Burger King, I believe it was, and I had 2 beers. So when the cops pulled them off of me, you know, because this guy was a jerk. Look, cops can be jerks. This cop was a jerk. He hauled us all in. He didn't care the fact that I got jumped. He just hauled us all in. They didn't give me a breathalyzer, which they don't do anyway for public intox, but they hauled us all in. And every time I've ever gone for a top secret clearance, I got this write-up that I have to submit with it saying I got arrested when I was 22 years old. And it was more like a ticket, but I had to stay in the drunk tank for 5 hours. My mom wouldn't come in and get me. She told me to stay there and learn my lesson. And which I did. But for those 5 hours, I had no rights. I couldn't tell that cop, no, I'm not going with you. I had to go. That was the authorities. Let me tell you something. You never had the authorities roll over you? Next, go next. If you want to know what it's like and you've never had a speeding ticket, I'm not recommending you do this, but go 12 miles, go 10 miles over the speed limit. Get pulled over. The feeling that you have when a cop's walking towards you is the same feeling that you're going to have when you realize, oh, damn, I gave away my rights when something goes bad. The fact is, folks, don't give up your rights. You were entrusted with those rights. You were entrusted to defend those rights. And you have those rights for a reason, so that you can prove that you can be trained, trusted, and that you won't quit. So that at the end of your life, whether it's 41 years like my father or whether it's 90 years like other people, you will have been able to prove that you can be trained, trusted, and that you won't quit. Otherwise, what's the point in living here? And you live in a country where you have the freedom to choose what you're going to say, who you're going to follow, and you can defend those rights so that you continue to have them and your children have them and the rest of the people that live in this country can have them. Never give that up. Never. And another thing, I know people in the NRA. I know how it's ran. They have never killed anybody. They stand against gun violence. In fact, the NRA is probably responsible for teaching more people in this country how to safely use a gun, and sponsored more schools and safety products, just like they did at that school, Parkland High School, where the Kevlar screens that they put over some of those kids were paid for by NRA money. The NRA is made up of some attorneys and 5 million people who are members. There's not 5 million kid killers in this country. Every once in a while, there's one crazy kid. There is an average age is 34. But from almost all, for all of the school shooters, and I would have to say the majority of mass shooters in this world, there is a couple of commonalities, which I've told before. No father, they come from a fatherless home, and they're on psychotropic drugs. And they've all been approached by law enforcement in most cases. And nothing's been done. So there's nothing that anybody can say to me in their snarky little Twitter ways. So one person here on Twitter says, I agree, but whatever the reason, that young man in Florida got a gun. That needs to change. Well, here's what I had, Mike. Here's what I say to you. I don't disagree with you on that, but nothing has to change. You know what has to happen? It has to be enforced. And in Florida, what happened if that school in Florida is that they had a policy in place called the Promise Policy where they would not arrest kids in the school. And that the school counselor and that same sheriff's deputy that wormed out and didn't do anything had actually complained and actually put a request that under the Baker Act that kid, the shooter, be committed for a period of time, which they can do under the Baker Act, as to evaluate the safety of that kid. And you know what? They didn't do anything. The school denied it. The sheriff's department denied it. And if he had gone and done that, he would not have been able to buy guns legally. And if he already had guns, they could have gone in and got them. It's already on the books. It's just not enforced. The Texas shooter that shot up a church, the Air Force failed to tell authorities when he got out that he had been in jail, and if they had done that, he would not have been able to buy a gun. Now, you're going to be able to get guns illegally in this country. When I was in the FBI, we bought them all the time. We do gun buys. That's how we bust these people. It's going to happen. And you'll never be able to stop that. Never. I told that statistical a while ago. Most of those killings that happen via gun in Chicago and other places are done with illegally purchased weapons. So thank you for your comment, Mike, but I hope you see that's the reality. You agree with all this, but nothing. What has to change is the laws that are in place have to be enforced. We don't have to get rid of the Second Amendment. So Mike again, same Mike, says what's happened to mass shooters over the past year has pushed you towards gun reform. Again, the stuff's on the books. The reason these people have been able to get guns is because of failures. What happened in Columbine 20 years ago, they got guns illegally. What happened up in Sandy Hook, the kid was so crazy that he couldn't get guns. His mom bought them for him. Somebody says they got on Twitter from Facebook just to see the smartasses. Yeah, they're here, but I see Mike's point. And as far as the thing about somebody saying that they corrected me on something, if you're talking about George Washington, you didn't correct me on anything. Look, the fact is, you can't tell me whether or not a prostitute is telling the truth. It was on 60 Minutes last night, or whether or not the Kennedys were connected to organized crime or not, which they most likely were. You're not going to tell me whether or not George Washington was truly a Christian back in the day or not. I have to go on what is written on our dollar. I have to go what is written on our Constitution. I have to go with what is the fact that God is mentioned in every aspect of the beginning of this country. Quite frankly, I don't care if they were atheists or not. The fact is God had his hand all in this, or we wouldn't be here in a free country. Being free goes against what what Satan wants. It goes against what nefarious, power-hungry dictators and communists want. The fact that we are still a free country over 240 years after it started is in and of itself, in this day and age, a miracle. Partly because of the sheer laziness of human beings, which you are seeing now in this country. Gulf Coaster says that every branch of the government failed in Parkland High School shooting. Absolutely right. So, let's move on now real quick, because I got to hit the gym here in a minute. I just want to talk real quick about Stormy D. Let's go to the A block. let's see here. So it appears as though if you watched the 60 Minutes interview last night with Stormy Daniels, and then if you watched all day today on all the mainstream media networks, it's as if they are engaged in a slow-moving porn with the porn star Stormy Daniels. There was more like last night, you know, when I watched the 60 Minutes interview. Anderson Cooper, you know, he kind of pressed that attorney a little bit, but it bothers me the fact that they got a picture with all of them standing together afterwards, which they had on TV today. Him, the attorney, Stormy, and Anderson Cooper embraced. I find that strange. The attorney is as much of a little snake as I've ever seen before, and he's a tiny little guy. He is also a Democratic operative with a history of working for the Democratic Party. I don't think that's just by coincidence. And Stormy Daniels appeared to me in that 60 Minutes interview to be as confused about what she's doing as she is about who might have approached her in a parking lot. She said somebody approached her in a parking lot and threatened her. So that could have been somebody that worked for the attorney so that he could approach her and then say, hey, do you need an attorney? I mean, look, I know how bad people think, and I wouldn't put it past them to do that. But she seemed like somebody who was going down a path that she is not ready to go down. And quite frankly, or she's not prepared to go down. And quite frankly, I really don't care about any of this stuff. It doesn't determine whether or not Trump is doing a good job. He's doing a really good job. The jury is still out whether or not him signing this budget is going to be beneficial to us, where he can maneuver that money to where it needs to go. That's still to be seen. But just like today, they had the second biggest day on record for stocks for an increase. His approval rating is now over 40%, and he's made a tremendous amount of forward movement in our taxes. There's been big tax breaks. I saw on TV 3 million people got bonuses this year in this country. That 3 million, that's not a lot out of the entire workforce, but still things are progressing and moving forward. And this is why I say it's pretty impressive, despite the fact that he still doesn't have a full cabinet. And despite the fact that he's under constant attack by the media to a point where I wouldn't be able to even turn the TV on if I was in his shoes. Let me see here. Steven said she looked a little high during her interview. Maybe. She is a porn star. I almost called her something else. So I just wanted to point that out. I watched it last night. Nothing came out of it. They went back and forth several times. The attorney insinuated, which I thought was very unprofessional, that he may have some other evidence. I don't care about the evidence. I don't see how in the world they can link this to campaign anything. This whole thing about the campaigns and how these things are financed, you do realize that everybody that's on the board of the campaign finance committee or oversight committee, you do realize that those are Republicans and Democrats. They are dedicated to the two private companies that own every seat of government in this country. It's a monopoly by two private companies that are not government entities. I don't know if you all realize that or not, but they're the ones that are overseeing themselves. So, of course, they're going to screw each other over at any chance that they can. That's what they do. Let's go to the Truth Zone. I don't really have much else to say about that. Let's do it. I'm getting serious now. I got my little buddy Rico right down here next to me. He needs your prayers. Unfortunately, Rico is not feeling too good, and the vet doesn't know right now at this point if it is his teeth are bad, which they are, or if something else is going on. So he hasn't eaten in 3 days. He's still drinking water, but he's on a ton of medication. So your prayers are needed, and pray that he will get better. Of course, he's my 18-year-old Jack Russell buddy. He's my son. He's my best friend. But I just want to say real quick before we go that all the stuff that I talked about today, about the Constitution, about God, about our rights, and about these weirdos that are communists, that are putting these marches on constantly, fundamental Muslims from the Muslim Brotherhood, communists and Marxist globalists that are paying for it, these communist-minded leftists from Parkland High School, Emma Gonzalez wearing a Cuba flag on her shirt. That's a communist nation. I've got to make this point again, folks. You need to stop being afraid to say what you feel. The fact is, if you stand up together, then you will literally stand together, and people can't push over. They can say whatever they want, but the fact is, when you get enough people standing together for the right reason, nobody can come against you. You just can't. But I still don't see it. I see a lot of people talking about it. I still don't see it. And I guarantee you, if I try to put together a rally, most people are not going to show right now. We're not quite there. But I'm here to tell you, whether it be Facebook and the lies that they propel forward, I mean, they are definitely, even while they're being caught, they're still going after wanting to go after. I just saw Paul Callan there and completely lost my chain of thought. Folks, I lost my train of thought, but this is what I was saying. You have to stop being individuals and start being a group. Start being unified. You need to stop with this nonsense of sitting on your couch and groveling. Those people are not. I don't care if it was 200,000 or 800,000 that were there this past weekend. The fact is, you didn't see any conservative rallies of 1 million people for the Second Amendment. Why is that? It doesn't cost anything to get together and in New York City take a train down to the mayor's mansion. If you live in Little Rock, everybody could drive down there and stand together at the Capitol building. The fact is, we're still not there. We're still not unified. Facebook is lying to everybody, selling your information. They are still at this point censoring conservatives. Twitter does the same thing. YouTube does the same thing. And you stand there and you take it. Amazon has done it to my book. They've done it to Juanita Broderick's book. We're being attacked. You shouldn't feel comfortable with it no matter what your stance is. But until we stand together, we're going to continue to be attacked. I'm Jonathan Gillum. That's my buddy Rico. This is The Experts. And remember, wherever you see me, wherever you hear my voice, even if Paul Callan is next to me, I don't care. The truth has arrived. Yes, that is the world-famous Paul Callan that is tuned into my show. You've seen him on CNN next to me, and he's still on there. He has been on this show before. He comes on Sirius XM sometimes, and he is the attorney that sued O.J. Simpson civilly on behalf of the Nicole Brown Simpson family and won. So it's good to have Paul Callan on here, lend me some credibility. And don't forget, if I can close this stuff down here, go get this book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. You see it scrolling right there. See that scrolling? This book will help you understand how to dissect your life into sectors. And then I take all my experience as a SEAL, an air marshal, a contractor, an FBI special agent, and a cop. And I teach you how attackers think and how they plan attacks so that you can look at your life and literally build target packages on yourself in every single sector, so you can better defend against those attacks. Imagine what if that school in Parkland had used that. Go get it. It's on Amazon. They're not going to advertise it. I'm advertising it. You tell everybody about it. Let's get this book selling. Peace.
This show has been Paul Callan approved.
How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. I figure everybody wants to see Rico before I close. Hold on. Come here, dog. There he is. Still looking good. Right? God bless you, little buddy. Got a little piece of meat. He's holding a piece of meat in his mouth. What a dog. Ugh. There you go. And we're out of here.